Yay, very exciting.
Here they come. Hi, everyone.
Come into the room. Hi, everybody. Oh, this is great.
Be good to give everyone until about 10:05?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got the music. We can chillax. Everybody's been stressed out from H-1B season, so it's nice to take a pause that relaxes and refreshes, right?
Exactly. I like
Nadia,
the music touch. This is great. I could actually listen to this in the background all day. I love it.
Yeah, we've upgraded. We've figured out Zoom sound, so it's very exciting. This is
pretty awesome.
Alcorn broadcast with music coming to you live.
Yeah.
From Manhattan.
Everywhere.
Houston, Dallas.
Wow. Are you all fully remote?
Maryland. Yep, I'm Maryland.
Yeah, we're like 90% fully remote, 10% hybrid.
Amazing.
Yeah, great.
I'm moving to Manhattan, whoever's going to be there.
Ooh.
We've got some questions.
I'm here.
Amazing. So it's such an awesome place. I lived there before. I can't stay away. I need to come back now that we can do everything remotely.
Well, I left and came back, so I'm your person.
Yeah. It's the same. I left and now I'm going back. Just as housing prices are rising.
I know.
Time.
No, everybody's coming back.
Everybody's ready to live again.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's funny how at the beginning of the pandemic, it was just like, oh my gosh, I can breathe. I don't have to type emails in the back of an Uber, bopping around between San Francisco and San Jose, trying to switch between high heels and ballet flats or whatever. But like, it's so good to be home. But now I'm like, oh my God, there's a traffic jam. This is so exciting.
I know.
Right.
Like, oh, looks like a lot of people are here. Oh my gosh, there's so many names I recognize. Thank you for being here today. Clients, friends, lawyers, people from different universities, anonymous people who use their Gmail addresses to register. We don't know who you are in the world or what you do, but welcome. It's very exciting. We'll get started in just a minute. A great music track, it just goes on.
Yeah, it's really soothing.
And we've got a lot to cover, and also super exciting. Attorney Jeff from our team is here to support us because we've had such a deluge of questions in recent webinars that we need backup. So he's going to be typing the answers to questions in the Q&A panel that Nadia and I are not able to answer live, and we'll include all the questions that everybody sent at registration as well as live questions. So it'll be good. Excited to be here with everybody today.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna try my DJ skills.
Hi.
Ooh, fade out.
Perfect. Wow. Thank you very much, Sophie. Okay, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the presentation on Not Selected in the H-1B Lottery, Now What? This webinar is being recorded and the recording link will be emailed to all attendees. This webinar is provided as an educational service by Alcorn Immigration Law. The information discussed is an overview only and should not be construed as legal advice or advice to take any specific action. Please be sure to consult a knowledgeable professional with assistance with your particular issue. Lastly, please submit any questions you may have using the Q&A function. The questions are shared publicly, so please don't share any sensitive or personal information. There is an option to submit your questions anonymously. We will try to get to as many as time permits. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our CEO and founder, Sophie Alcorn, our expert business team attorney, Nadia Zaidi, and our special guest, Danielle Goldman, co-founder and executive director at Open Avenues. Let's begin.
Thank you so much, Alex, for that wonderful and soothing introduction. I love anytime I get to hear your voice. It's like instant mindfulness, so thank you. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us today. The topic of today's webinar is not selected in the H-1B lottery, now what? In our Immigration Lawyers Association, they have a webinar for attorneys coming up on the same topic. And in the newsletter, they called it OCAP because it's the CAP subject H-1B. So we'll be talking about OCAP and also O not CAP subject. We've got a lot to cover. Nadia, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Of course. Thank you for asking me to join you.
You're welcome. I love it when we get to do webinars together.
Me too.
So by way of background, for those of you who are new to the Alcorn community, our mission is to overcome borders, expand opportunity, and connect the world. And we do that by practicing compassionate, cutting edge, and rigorous immigration law in service of the betterment of humanity. So wherever you are, whatever you do, whether you're in another country or already in the United States, whether you work at a company or you're hoping to get a job, we've got you covered. Our focus is tech immigration. My background is that I am the daughter of an immigration lawyer and an immigrant from Germany. I've been practicing law, immigration law for over 14 years, but before that spent my childhoods in my dad's law office, eating sugar cubes, dialing phone numbers on faxes to the INS in the 90s, and helping my dad do impossible immigration cases that I didn't know were impossible at the time. So that's just what I did. Now I've founded Alcorn Immigration Law. I'm super proud of our incredible team. I host a podcast called Immigration Law for Tech Startups, which you can subscribe to through our website. And you can also check out my weekly immigration advice column on TechCrunch Plus called Dear Sophie, where I answer readers' questions. Joining me today is my esteemed colleague, Nadia Zaidi. She is a brilliant strategist when it comes to extraordinary ability and national interest immigration for startup founders, brilliant scientists and researchers, individuals whose contributions are crucial to companies in the United States. Nadia was featured in Forbes as a top US startup immigration attorney. She is a proud first-generation American. And just once again, Nadia, so delighted to be doing this webinar with you today.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Our team is diverse. We are distributed. We all adore what we do. It's personal for all of us in some way, shape, or form. Many of us are either immigrants or children of immigrants, or we're married to immigrants, or we've just fallen in love with helping immigrants. Really, the immigrant story is quite inspirational. It takes a lot of grit, determination, and perseverance. And we are dedicated to supporting people to achieve their dreams. And I think that because of our amazing team and our focus on communication and creative strategic thinking, I think that's a large factor in our successes over the last several years. I started the firm in my kitchen when my kids were toddlers, and that was at the sunset hours of the Obama administration, where there appeared to be a very different landscape on the horizon for immigration in the United States than what turned out to be. But we've grown tremendously. We have a stellar success rate, and we're just so grateful for the opportunity to support so many incredible people from around the world. We are very tapped into a deep and rich Silicon Valley network. I'm a mentor at 500 startups. We're connected to major universities and VCs, publications. So we really like to leverage these connections to support our clients. And part of our offerings for people who are focusing on extraordinary ability is leveraging these connections. We helped one of our clients who got an O1 to become Forbes 30 under 30 through connecting that individual with another former client who had also done the same. So we like to be creative and strategic to set people up for success.
Mhm.
Okay, so today we're talking about H-1Bs or lack of H-1Bs. So let me set the stage with some immigration context. So, all right. Work, little computer, work. Okay, great. Okay, so Nadia, break it down, high level. What's a visa? What's a green card? Do you need a visa to get a green card? How does that work?
You don't. So I always like to explain it to people like this, that you can think of US immigration as two parallel roads, I guess. One is non-immigrant, one is immigrant. So non-immigrant are visas. So these are things like an F1, H-1B, O1, TN, so on and so forth. And then green card is when you're applying to be a permanent resident of the United States. And those two things can happen at the same time. You don't have to be a non-immigrant to become a green card holder, but oftentimes it's sort of a stepping stone. And so we often see people have a certain sort of path where they might come in as an F1, then they get selected in the lottery, or they don't. They go to H-1B, maybe they go to one of the other options we're going to talk about today. And then eventually the goal for many people is to get a green card. And then the final step on the pathway is citizenship, when you actually become an American citizen. I hope I explained that okay.
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much. And some students and academics come here on J1 exchange visas with academic training programs or interns, research, but there's about 1 million international students in the US at any given time who have gone through the F1 student visa. So what are the ways that an F1 student can navigate employment in the US before and after graduation?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that really is the starting point on this journey for many, many people. So when you're an F1 student, you will have 2 or 3 different opportunities to work for a US employer. And so one of those opportunities is CPT, which is curricular practical training. This is while you're still a student, and there's certain programs which allow you to work for an employer while you're still completing your degree. Then there's the OPT program, which is optional practical training. And this is the 1 year that F1 students get after they graduate to work for a US employer or themselves, and to get experience in their field. So if you got a degree in computer science, this is your chance to actually get some experience in the field. And then for STEM majors, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, you get an additional 2 years after that OPT period to further that experience. And then of course, with STEM OPT, there's certain restrictions. So you can't exactly be self-employed, but you can use that time to really strengthen your resume, to work for somebody else, and in certain situations, perhaps work for a company that you might have founded. So these are some crucial years where you can really pave the path for your longer term immigration strategy.
Yeah. And the way schools interpret CPT and pre-completion OPT and which employers qualify and do startups qualify, all of that is very university specific. So a lot of those questions, we have to refer people back to their schools. And most people who go the corporate track, are hoping that their employer will put them in the H-1B lottery every single year. Pre-graduation, OPT, 2 years of STEM OPT. And I mean, Nadia, we'll go into this more, but in the lottery, we just had there were over 485,000 registrations. That's the highest ever. And there are only 80,000 spots.
Yeah.
So employers being willing to file multiple years in a row is really a critical part of this process for so many.
Absolutely.
And then most people assume you need an H-1B to get a green card, but we are going to bust that myth today.
Yeah.
All right. So, okay. And then just super high level, 3 paths up the mountain to a green card, different paths, different plateaus, different journeys, different landscapes. But when you get to the top, you're a permanent resident. All permanent residents are the same. Once you're there, once you're all the way there, you get a lifetime status with 10-year green cards. For today's purposes, we're going to be focusing on business routes, but if you're in love with a US citizen and you want to do the whole 90-day fiance thing, that's probably the fastest, cheapest option for you. So don't forget that one. And yes, there's still a green card lottery. If you're from a country with a low level of immigration to the United States, it doesn't hurt to put your name in. All right, so let's dive in. Not selected. Now what? Wah, wah. It can be so stressful and sad and scary.
Oh, I know. But that's what we're here for. We're here
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. All right. So here's a strategy. Okay. Strategy number 1. Let's imagine that somebody is in the United States. They just got their master's degree. They're on their first year of regular OPT, and they were not born in India or China. Theoretically, they could just have their employer, or they could sponsor themselves for a green card, right, Nadia?
They could theoretically, yes.
Yes. So of course we'd have to vet if the individual person were qualified, but in that circumstance, that individual could potentially self-petition, or the company could petition for an EB-2 national interest waiver green card for somebody with a master's degree. Now, when we get into discussions like that with employers and candidates, some of the factors that typically come up for consideration are the company saying, hey, we weren't ready to actually sponsor anybody for a green card yet. What are we committing to in this process? It's more money and it takes longer than an H-1B, but it's pretty predictable if somebody qualifies and then they're out of the 3-year cycles of H-1B renewals if they get selected for an H-1B. There's also a consideration regarding travel. If somebody needs to travel internationally frequently and they're on an F1 student visa, it's going to get messy if they're trying to get a green card in parallel. So that could be a reason to wait. Other reasons to wait might be if the person was born in India or China and has really long backlogs. But on the other hand, maybe that's a reason to actually just get the green card started sooner. So, Nadia, to what extent is, like, when you're talking to people, this is a pretty individualized recommendation, right?
Absolutely. So there's no cookie cutter answer and there's no direct path. You know, sometimes people want to know, well, if I do this, can I automatically get a green card?
Like if they rack up certain accomplishments, will that qualify? Or
right. We have to look at their, I like to call it a portfolio, CV, whatever you'd like to call it. We have to look at the full picture, right? Because that's what an immigration officer does. And so the EB-1A or the EB-2 national interest waiver, they are very focused on a person's professional accomplishments. So sometimes when you're coming out as an F1 student, you haven't really had that much time to build up your professional CV yet. So
certainly with a bachelor's degree.
Exactly.
And frequently with a master's degree, maybe a PhD.
PhDs. Yeah. I've done them for PhDs. We've done them. We've done lots of them actually. So it really depends. But some people might have experience abroad, or there might be something there that we need to evaluate to see whether they're eligible, because USCIS really does not like accomplishments from when people were students. They always
Unless they're
back.
clearly at the professional level, whatever
Exactly. That is correct. Right. So it can't be like Student of the Year award. It should be like a professional level journal, publish your paper, things like that.
Yeah, student council election sadly doesn't count, even if you're very persuasive.
Right.
Yes. And there's also the perm route. There's the standard EB2 and EB3 green cards, but perm is taking so long. I'm hesitant to kick off anybody's perm process at the beginning of OPT. And then the closer you get to the end of your final year of OPT, whether you only qualify for regular OPT or it's STEM OPT, the closer you get to that, the more risky it is to start the green card, and the more likely you'd want to try to get another type of non-immigrant visa first, right?
Right, exactly. That's right.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It's like a puzzle, I said. You have to.
It is. So if somebody is not just going to like drop everything and start the green card process tomorrow, let's talk about some of the alternative visa options. So what is the O1, please?
Yeah, so O1s are some of my favorite visa types because they don't have lotteries associated with them. You can file any time of the year. You don't need to wait for just one moment to file an O1 petition, but they're extraordinary ability petitions. So they are very focused on the individual candidate's record of achievements in their professional field. So we need to figure out what is their niche field. And then again, what is their record of accomplishments? Have they won any awards or prizes? Have they published? Have they been written about? I like to tell people, are you a thought leader in your field? Are people asking you your opinion? Are you speaking at conferences or writing about a topic that people are really valuing your contributions on?
Yeah. And the other magical thing about this, and we have our class Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp, but the other cool thing is that this is achievable for people. So if you're not there yet, but this resonates with you, you may be able to get prepared to do it one day. And
absolutely,
we have our class, which we'll share at the end. It's called Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp, and you can all have a discount to participate in that. So usually I think of it as a startup founder with a business role would go for an O1A, a scientific researcher would go for an O1A, and a UX UI designer would go for an O1B.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there other main types of categories that you've seen within our tech immigration client crowd?
Yeah, so I always tell founders and entrepreneurs that we should try to narrow the field as much as we can to sort of make it more competitive for themselves. So every entrepreneur or founder has some niche area of specialization. Either maybe you're a CTO, so your background is in the actual computer science realm. Maybe you're the CEO and you have a management background. Maybe you're a product designer. Perhaps your specialization is a finance related field. So we try our best to look at their experience and then narrow down what the field may be. And we don't have to choose one. Oftentimes, well, maybe not oftentimes, but many times we've said this is an entrepreneur of extraordinary ability with specialization in XYZ. And that could be,
and it's easier to set people apart at the crossroads of two disparate fields as well. And this is where it really helps to have a brilliant lawyer like Nadia to help set you apart.
Yeah, the weirder it is, the more we love it. So
bring your full nerd self to us. And there's a variety of criteria. You don't need all of them. The other really cool thing is that the Biden administration just made it easier to qualify. So there's new lower threshold requirements in a variety of the fields. It's very clear now that venture capital awards can count as awards. if you write 5 to 10 papers, I mean, join Forbes Council, like you can get a bunch of articles published. You can judge hackathons or pitch competitions, but you can't just get invited. You actually have to do it. Startup founders that have received investment, that can count as high remuneration. So there's a lot of categories we have to work with. And there's just one question that flashed by, which is about what about high revenue generating sales? I mean, sales can go into if you receive high compensation for your industry and your location, but Nadia, can you just speak real briefly to the prong of original contributions of significance to the field and what that requires, please?
Yeah, of course. So high revenue generating sales, we'd have to know, what is the field of endeavor? So what was your role in which you were able to make that accomplishment where you generated high revenues for the company? And we could use that as to show your critical capacity, that you were a critical person, you were indispensable to your company or organization or business. And as evidence, here is the revenues or sales that were accomplished under your leadership or your role. And that also then can be used to say that, hey, this person, these are his or her original contributions to their field. They've been able to do this for the company that they were working for.
But with sales, we'd have to set it apart, because you can't just say I used old-fashioned sales techniques and I made $10 million for my company, so that's original. That wouldn't be original. You'd have to invent a new sales platform technology or something.
That's right. That's right. That would be more critical capacity, that you were in a critical essential capacity for your company.
Okay. And so if people are interested in working towards an O1 or the related green cards, an EB1A or an EB2 NIW, we do have our special class, Extraordinary Ability Bootcamp. We'll send this to you after, and maybe I can ask Alex now to put a link in the chat window for everybody. But the discount code is SPRING20 for 20% off of your enrollment. And it's a 15 module video class we recorded that comprehensively goes through each of the criteria for O1, EB1A, and EB2 NIW. And Nadia, we did get a question from the audience. How does the O visa differ from an EB1 or an EB2 NIW? And let's focus that in terms of how quickly can you get it, and what do you end up with, and what are the requirements, or how does the difficulty level compare, please?
Sure. So the O1 can be thought of as a younger sibling of the EB1A, for example. And the EB2 is a little bit different, so I'll talk about that in a second. But the EB1A is also extraordinary ability. However, if you remember what I said at the beginning, there's two roads. Well, the O1 is non-immigrant. It's issued for a temporary period of 3 years. But the EB1A is a green card pathway. So you're applying for an immigrant visa. And it's a two-part process. So the first part is that EB1A application where you're arguing to USCIS that, hey, I'm an individual of extraordinary ability, and therefore I should be able to apply for a green card based on that extraordinary ability. So just filing an EB1A alone and getting that EB1A approved alone does not give you status just yet. You need to actually go ahead and file that green card application as well. Then wait for your
So let's say you were not born in India or China and you file an EB1A with premium processing, and then you file an I-485 adjustment of status application in the US. How long is it going to take till the whole thing is done? Years, right?
Yeah, years. And so I guess people then want to know, well, when can I work using that whole process? Yeah. But that's also been over a year to get that EAD card. So you still need an underlying status.
Anything in the short term, don't waste your time with the green card, get an O1. And if this is like, I want to move to America in 2026, and I wasn't born in India or China, then you can start your green card process now.
That's right.
Otherwise, maybe wait, but talk to us because it's complicated. And here's another question, and we don't do EB5 because we're focusing on tech immigration. This person is going to be finishing their master's in July of 2023, and they wanted to know about an EB5, which is basically invest one 500K to $2 million and hire 10 Americans. That whole EB-5 world, like, it's gonna take years and years and years and years. You can't get a work permit along the way. I would say if you have the resources to consider starting EB-5 in a year and a half, your time would be better spent doing boot camp and becoming a person of national interest or extraordinary ability. It's going to be cheaper and faster.
Yes.
To get your green card.
Yes.
Invest in yourself.
Exactly.
Invest in your personal brand, your thought leadership. One of our clients, Nadia, wrote 10 articles in a Chinese product management online magazine to qualify for her EB-1A. She ended up getting a whole book deal and has a bestseller in China now on product management. So
it's amazing.
So
it's
really,
amazing.
this is an investment in yourself.
Absolutely. Yes, it's sort of the motivation you need.
It is. Okay, so, and this person raises a really good point. I keep saying if you're not from India or China, that's kind of depressing. Sorry about that. So if you are from India or China, the deal is that there are very, very long green card backlogs in EB2 and EB3. Now, if you are married, let's say you were born in India, and your spouse is an Indian citizen, but your spouse was born in Kenya, you guys actually get to go in the Kenya line, not the India line. That's called cross-chargeability. So just because you were born in that country doesn't mean you have to wait in that country's line. But if you are subject to the India or China lines, I have a podcast coming out in a few weeks with Stuart Anderson of the National Foundation for American Policy, which is this big immigration think tank. And I asked him, it's like, hey, Stuart, before the pandemic, there was all this crazy stuff about if you were born in India and you have a PhD, it's going to take 151 years for you to get an EB2 green card. And I'm like, what are the latest numbers? Because I know it's fluctuated a lot with COVID. He was like, nah, just tell them decades. Who knows? Just decades. So it's very sad. And I'm no longer relying on the government to actually figure this out. So you need to put your own strategy together. And so for you, EB1 is the fastest category. You can consider the EB1A for extraordinary ability. That's the one where you have most efficacy in controlling your future if you go for that one, or you can get a job at a company or a university as a researcher, or you can spend a year at a subsidiary of a US company and then get transferred back to the States and qualify for an EB1C. But most of our clients born in India or China focus on maybe an O1 as a stepping stone, but then proceeding with the EB1A for extraordinary ability. Great. Okay, so now we have a question, which is the perfect segue, because we just talked about EB1C, and now we're going to talk about L1A. So I just talked about the green card, big sister of this one, really fast, the EB1C. Yep. But Nadia, tell us in slower language, what is L1? What's an transferee? How does that work?
Yeah. So just think of a multinational company. So there's a parent, subsidiary, office, or branch in 2 countries at a minimum. So let's say there's one in India and there's one in the US. If you work in the Indian office for at least 1 year as a manager or executive, or specialized knowledge, but manager, executive, and then you transfer to the US, you would be eligible for an L1. And the big sister that you were talking about is the EB1C, which is the manager or executive who then can apply for a green card. So that's what the L1 is. It's sort of like you get an O1 and then try to go for an EB1A. So you could also then do an L1. If you qualify, it's pretty fast because non-immigrant visas are faster than immigrant visas, and you get in here, and then the goal is to get a green
card. And these used to be really hard under Trump, but we've been getting just win on Ls that people took a chance to file because we didn't know if the administration would get more supportive, but they are much more supportive now than they were a few years ago. And the strategy here for a tech startup So if you're an early stage tech company and your folks don't qualify for O1 yet, and their STEM OPT is running out, and we can't find another option for them for whatever reason, if you have, let's just make it simple. If you have a subsidiary in another country, you can copy what the FANG companies do, Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google. They're like, oh, you got rejected, fine, go to our Vancouver office for a year, go to Switzerland for a year, and then we'll pull you back. So that's what they do. But I just want to make it really clear, with the rise of international PEOs like Deal or Remote or Syndesis, there's like a lot of these companies that will employ talent in Colombia, or maybe previously in Ukraine, right? A lot of US tech companies had engineering teams abroad working remotely as contractors through these agencies. Getting an L1 through those agencies is untested territory. If you've had somebody working for one of those PEOs remotely for a year and you're willing to transfer them through that PEO to keep employing them through that PEO in the US, we're willing to take on your case and try it, because it's a very important developing area of law that a lot of people will benefit from. But if you have the choice right now, the safer option is to create a full out subsidiary in another country. It will have tax consequences, it will have corporate law, employment law consequences, but employing your team directly for you is the easiest way to get an L1 when they return back to the States.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, and then Nadia, real quick, what is a manager? Can you just discuss people manager versus function manager, please?
Yeah, so a manager, we're talking high level, someone who is not doing day-to-day regular business activities, but it's somebody who is making high level decisions. If you're a people manager, you're managing other managers and you are a leader in the company, you're responsible for, high level business related decisions and guidelines and things of that nature. If you're a functional manager, then you're responsible for things like sales or marketing. Again, high level business functions, you're managing a budget, you are responsible for the direction of the company. And we should be able to prove that through either an org chart or if you're a functional manager, then a functional org chart.
Yeah.
What are the different things that you're responsible for?
Great. Okay, and then in the L1 world, we can typically get somebody from another country to the US in about 4 to 6 months on an L1, assuming that their consulate is actually open and processing visas post-COVID. Okay, next topic. J1 exchange visitors as a backup for an H-1B. I have very mixed feelings about it, but I do like to mention it. People can work for private companies in J1. You can have a 12-month internship if you recently graduated from a foreign college. You can come as a trainee for 18 months. You can be a researcher at a US tech startup for 5 years. Spouses can come, spouses can get work permits. These visas are being processed quickly, but the major drawback is non-immigrant intent. If somebody wants to live and work permanently in the United States, their visa will get denied at their consular interview.
Right, that's right.
And it's very difficult to get an H-1B after you arrive. You can get in trouble with the host organizations, and
you can be subject to a 2-year.
You can be subject to 212E.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I did, here's an aside on J1s, because this 2-year foreign residence requirement is a killer, and really brilliant international scholars are subject to it. I did my first post-COVID in-person webinar to a group of master's and PhD students at a university recently, and a few were staying after, and one person was like, yeah, can we talk about this 2-year foreign residence requirement thing? And I was like, yeah, sure. And they don't let me out around people anymore in real life. So I didn't know what to do with my microphone and my mask and my earrings and all these things. And I'm like, okay, so are you a Fulbright scholar? And he got all sheepish and he was like, yes. Like, oh, you see me. And I'm like, oh, you're effed. And I just blurted that out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But it's true. If you got a Fulbright and you got one of these J1s, you definitely have to go home to your country for 2 years, unless you can get an O1. So
that's right. That's right.
So next up, we have E1 and E2 trade and investor visas. These are for people actually doing trade, people actually investing, and any employees essential to these businesses. So for somebody not selected in the H-1B lottery, the way this can really be beneficial is sort of by happenstance. It's mostly like, oh, the company is owned by Japanese citizens, or, oh, this is actually a German automotive company, and the beneficiary who didn't get selected in the lottery is a German citizen. I wonder if our company qualifies as doing investment or trade in the United States, then we can get people with the same citizenship visas. So it's cool. It's kind of random. It's easier as like a startup founder if you're from one of these countries to intentionally start a company and go for one of these options. It's rare that it can save a company's beneficiaries. But it's there because sometimes people don't realize. They're like, oh yeah, we are owned by, we're trading on the Japanese stock exchange.
Right. Or if you have investors that happen to be from your home country, I spoke to someone from Ireland, the initial investors in the startup were Irish. And I was like, okay, if they continue to hold more than 50% ownership, you could possibly do the E2. Yeah. But, long-term, many startups want to raise money in the US. So I don't know how long that ownership, more than 50% ownership would work.
We gotta get people to an O1 anyway. Because if their equity dilutes, they can lose this status.
Exactly. That's right.
Okay. So tech startups, founders, sometimes they do H-1Bs and they don't work out. I have been obsessed with international entrepreneur parole. 1 year later, Nadia, what's the landscape looking like?
So we filed our first batch of cases in August of 2021. In February of 2022, we got our first set of RFEs. And now by April, we have RFEs on all the cases we filed. They're all the same, essentially, asking for more information and clarity on things that we kind of already submitted. So I don't know if they're just buying some more time to adjudicate these, but I'm quoting a 1+ year processing time expectation.
Really sad and frustrating. But the bottom line for people who are trying to be startup founders and we're trying to get an H-1B to do that is don't waste your time on international entrepreneur parole right now. Just focus on O1A accomplishments.
Yeah. And I'm really excited because most of our people were able to get O1s instead and they can
while we were waiting.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're like, oh, my investors need me here. I have to deploy all this capital.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Real briefly, because then I want to bring in Danielle, because we're going to be talking about H-1Bs without the lottery. Super, super exciting. But just shout out if your candidate who is not selected is a citizen of Mexico, Canada, Chile, Singapore, Australia, or Ukraine, or a few other countries that are having humanitarian crises. There are country-specific options that allow these individuals to work. Some of it is qualifying for a generic work permit. Some people have a very specific work visa. Some are only based on certain professions. Some are based on any professional occupation. So just notice if any of these countries ring a bell, contact us. There are other things we can do. Okay, with that, Nadia, stay here with me and let's invite Danielle up. Hi, Danielle. It is such a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Hi.
Good to be here. Good to see you guys.
Oh, it's wonderful. So I've been just a huge fan and proponent of Open Avenues Foundation ever since I met you and found out about it. Everybody, Danielle is the co-founder and executive director at Open Avenues. It is a nonprofit that has been supporting people in tech companies with unlimited H-1Bs without the lottery as a backup plan B option. I think one of our articles got published in Business Insider together about this. We've done a variety of webinars, and your team and your nonprofit has just been such a superhero collaborator for our clients when they run out of time and they're at the end and there's no possibility for time to get qualified for an O1. And they're like, what do I do? Or somebody ended up here on a B1 in the pandemic, and they're like, oh my God, somebody wants to invest $8 million in our company, but I'm a tourist and it's off season. How do I get an H-1B? So it's such a pleasure to have you here. Can you break it down for us, please, about Open Avenues and how this whole cap exempt thing works?
I can, yes. And thanks for having me. I first met Sophie and we bonded over the fact that both of our fathers are immigration attorneys. So we are forever linked through that shared history. And it's definitely the reason we both love what we do. So
it's really weird being the daughter of an immigration lawyer. You can't have a normal life.
You can't. You grow up with talking about it at the dinner table and it never goes away. So
you've seen what purpose is. There's no going back.
So my father, Jeff Goldman, and I founded Open Avenues Foundation together in 2017. And we've been building a global talent fellowship program ever since that we're going to hop into in a minute. But I want to start by just talking about cap exempt H-1Bs because so many of you on the call are here to learn about what those Plan B options are if you recently lost and have been frustrated by the lottery results and just how restrictive it was this year specifically. So H-1B organizations there are 4 types that we're going to jump into right after this, but they can always sponsor cap exempt H-1Bs outside of this lottery cap of 85,000. And they can be filed at any time throughout the year. And really what we're looking at is an approval process, of 6 to 8 weeks from development to, if you're filing with premium processing, getting an approval. It's fast, which is awesome. And the qualifications for a cap exempt H-1B are the same as an H-1B. Have to have a specialty occupation. There has to be control over your employment. You have to be getting paid the fair prevailing wage. If you meet those qualifications, you're also qualified for a cap exempt H-1B. It just has to be filed by one of the 4 types of cap exempt organizations that Congress has deemed are exempt from this annual lottery cycle. So those 4 types of cap exempt organizations are universities, government research organizations, nonprofit research organizations, and nonprofits that are affiliated with the university. So maybe we can give a few examples here of the different types of organizations. Open Avenues is not the only one. Cap exempt H-1B visas are being filed all the time by these organizations. Universities are straightforward. They're sponsoring, if you're a TA, they could sponsor you, or if you're a tenured professor, you could be sponsored as long as you're hired by that university. A common
Danielle, when I interviewed Stuart on the podcast last week, he wrote this. When I talked to him, I was like, do you know that you are a hero? And he's like very shy and very withdrawn. And he's like, oh, I just had to do it.
This policy, it's amazing.
You have changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and millions. This is incredible. So I asked about the genesis, and he basically said University of Michigan was upset because they couldn't get enough TAs and they had to keep canceling their classes. So they lobbied Congress, and Congress was like, oh, okay, we'll make some H-1B exceptions for you. That's where it came from.
It's unbelievable. So all 4 of these organizations have proven that they are sponsoring individuals for the betterment of the United States and society, and that it should be uncapped how many H-1Bs these 4 types of organizations can sponsor. So Open Avenues Foundation is a nonprofit that is affiliated with a university. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, started in Boston. We're now working nationally, and we have partnerships with universities in Massachusetts and now nationally. And those partnerships are affiliations with these schools. And that's what we've worked to build over the last 4 years. And we run a program called the Global Talent Fellowship. And if we can go to the next slide, we'll talk about why this is awesome for Open Avenues, but also for companies that are trying to keep their foreign talent.
Amazing. And I just have to say, we've done this multiple times. The government is fully aware. They have audited, they have reviewed everything, and it works. And we've had so many visa successes through this program. So here you go.
Awesome. Right. So Open Avenues runs a program called the Global Talent Fellowship. And The Global Talent Fellowship is an opportunity for foreign nationals to work for Open Avenues for 5 hours per week. And the fellows in our program are actually training individuals in their field. And what that looks like is through the form of micro internships. All of our fellows, whether they're software developers, data scientists, molecular biologists, they're working as in their fields of expertise, leading students in those projects. And our fellows are getting a lot out of this because they're leading students and learning to manage those teams of students during that time. And they're giving back to their community, but they also are sponsored for CAP exempt H-1B work visas. And this is awesome for our fellows who can get into work visas and work 5 hours for us. But how do they work full-time for their employers? And that's through concurrent employment. That's what everybody really wants, right? It's great to work for a CAP exempt organization, but you really want to be working for your full-time employer. And so the law says that once you are working in CAP exempt H-1B status part-time for a CAP exempt employer or full-time, any other employer that is not CAP exempt is able to concurrently sponsor you for a CAP exempt H-1B work visa. And Open Avenues is able to sponsor in our program, we sponsor individuals for 5 hours per week of work leading projects with students in their field at our partner universities. And law firms like Sophie's are able to then file a concurrent CAP exempt H-1B visa for the full-time employer once our fellows are approved for our visas. So we're looking at a 6 to 8 week timeline for individuals to get into our program and start that petition process to get an approval, and having a concurrent visa is able to be filed as soon as we get that approval at the end of those 6 to 8 weeks. So that's how that's working. That's what concurrent employment is. And
so basically for employers, it's like, okay, great. I have this person who wasn't selected. I got to get them an H-1B somehow. I want to nominate them to Open Avenues to see if they can get accepted into your program. If they can, ultimately, there's going to be magic that happens, and then the employer can get a second 35-hour-a-week H-1B for the person to also, in addition to all the micro internships and stuff through the company, work 35 hours a week directly on site for the CAP subject employer with the concurrent.
That's right. And the concurrent employment can be full-time, 40 hours per week or 35 hours per week. And we've done both depending on the company and how they prefer to do it with their law firm. So
let's talk about who qualifies. Yeah.
Yes. Perfect.
Great. Who qualifies?
So for the Open Avenues Fellowship Program, we are taking master's degree candidates or PhD candidates at the moment. We might go back to accepting bachelor's candidates in the future, but we've had a really high demand right now. So we're going to limit it to master's and PhD individuals with STEM or business related degrees. And you must be working in the field related to your degree. That's just to qualify for an H-1B. We're looking for 2 or more years of work experience in your field. Your time in OPT totally counts towards that. We want to see that you have industry experience that you can teach students about and impart your knowledge about what it's like to actually work in the workforce in your industry for students to learn from. You must have a job offer from a US employer. We don't take fellows who are looking to get into CAP exempt H-1B status and then want to go look for a job with that status. We actually partner directly with companies who nominate their employees to our program. So the companies must be willing to also sponsor the concurrent work visa that the company must file full-time after you're in status with us. So that's what we're looking for in our candidates. The way to apply for our program and to get this evaluation done is to have your employer nominate you. On our website, and I'll put in the link, there is a page for companies to nominate you as an employee. If you need more information before that happens, which I assume you do, you can go on our website, and I will put these links in the chat before I hop off. And you can actually fill out an intake on our global talent page. and you'll get the one pagers to send to your company, and then they can nominate you for the program.
And for our clients, we're happy to ask you, Danielle, if we can introduce people directly where we think they're qualified.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
we like to know when our clients are considering this pathway, so we can be in full support throughout the process as well.
Perfect.
And from a company perspective, I mean, I think it's a win-win, because in addition to employing this individual, the company also gets a whole talent pipeline of U.S.
Yes.
diverse, underrepresented student candidates that are eager, able, willing, familiar with the company's work and processes. So especially now in the Great Resignation, when there's so many open tech and business jobs in the States, this is just a wonderful thing for your recruiting pipeline in the future.
Perfect. Wonderfully said, Sophie. It's part of the whole spiel. So thanks for rounding it out. You've heard it a few times.
Yeah, well, I'm just so appreciative for what you and your dad have created, and how many people's lives it's changing. And if you are listening to this from a giant tech company, please talk to Danielle and me about scaling this program for people at your giant tech company, because it's a wonderful option, and there's a lot of students in the US who will benefit. All right, with that, we already chatted about green cards, so I'm just going to chat a little bit, and then we have maybe just one more question. But with any of this, please remember, it's not just your money that you're investing in the process, it's also your time and energy, and clear communication, accountability partners, like all of these things matter so much psychologically for the process of getting through immigration. Like, yes, Nadia is a legal wizard, genius, guru, but you also need to hold it together mentally and mindfully, and do all of your law of attraction stuff or whatever your spiritual practice is to do this, because it's not for the faint of heart. And a lot of this stuff, especially for O's, or just even standing up for yourself, it can like trigger us with feelings of lack of self-worth, lack of ability to get it done. Do I really deserve this? But yes, you do. And anybody can make this happen. And so supporting yourself with people, surrounding yourself with people who support you and can help you not wallow in procrastination and imposter syndrome is just a really important gift you can give yourself for this process. Please contact us. We are delighted to support you. If you're at one of our client companies and you want to talk to us further, to Jeff or Nadia or myself about one of these options, or one of our additional expert immigration attorneys, you know how to reach us. For new clients, please contact us at hello@alcorn.law. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and what goals you are trying to reach in your company, so that we can best support you. And a big thank you to Jeff, who's been supporting Nadia and me so graciously with providing answers to so many of our audience questions. We do have the list of all the questions, and also the registration questions. And so we'll do our best in follow-up to try to get you all answers to those. But please remember that you can always reach out to us to schedule a consultation to discuss a new case. We're happy to facilitate those introductions to Danielle and Open Avenues. Nadia, any closing thoughts?
No, it was a great discussion, I thought. Lots of helpful information. And I wanted to thank Jeff for sharing all those useful answers as well.
Wonderful. And thank you so much to Alex and Lex for facilitating this webinar, and to our very special guest, Danielle Goldman. Thank you for all you do, and thank you for joining us today. Everybody will receive a link to the recording and materials via email. Be well and keep in touch. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, Sophie.